Chapter 15. Will. Will fussed with his hair in the mirror that stood in the corner of the basement, blood pounding in his ears as his nervousness grew. Days had passed since Lucien had spoken to Royce Estelle, which was already a treat. To top it off, Lucien had spoken on the phone with Melanie during his break time, speaking more to the camera above him than to his phone. "You don't have to drive me home tonight," he had said to her. "I have something to do that'll keep me late." Will hadn't quite known what Lucien meant until the idol winked up at the lens and pointed down to the floor. Now, the building was quiet and empty, save for Lucien Angel making his way down to the basement, down to Will. He still wasn't convinced any of it was real and not a prolonged fantasy. But did it matter either way? His hair looked presentable, as did the room around him, thanks to frantically cleaning up during the remaining time between Lucien's call and the end of the day. His prized mementos were still on the wall, but the old shirt and his new fixation, the underwear Lucien had given him, were tucked away in a dresser drawer. His bed was neatly made, and his desk was spotless. Everything was in order, but he took one last look over the space, flicking on a few lamps to brighten the room a bit more. He had no idea what the night had in store for him, and the butterflies in his stomach were a torrent as he waited by the door. 2 small knocks made Will jump, his heart picking up pace as he fumbled with the lock. His hands slipped more than a few times, but eventually he got the door open, and he was face to face with Lucien. He was dressed in a white cropped button-up that had a few buttons undone, making a V that Will took a long moment to gawk at. His jeans were high-waisted and baggy, the black denim ripped in several spots. Overall, a standard Lucien Angel outfit, which meant it drove Will crazy. It also didn't help that his long red hair, while in its usual ponytail, was messier than usual, with several strands loose that framed his exquisite face. What really gave him pause was Lucien's makeup. He wore eyeliner often, but today it was more smoky, framing his blue eyes as if they were a painting, intense and striking. Will couldn't help himself as he stared at every inch of Lucien Angel, eliciting a slight upturn of the idol's lips. "Are we going to stand here all day?" Lucien asked, crossing his arms over his chest. Will composed himself as much as he was able and stepped aside to let Lucien in. He strode in gracefully, and Will caught his scent as he passed by, sweet and floral like a rose. His stomach did a flip, and he had to shut the door quickly to distract himself. Lucien went right for Will's desk, taking a seat there and crossing his legs. "Will," he called. Will was at his side in an instant, like a loyal dog heeding its master. "Show me something." Will cocked his head in confusion. Like what?" Lucien shrugged, using one leg to spin the chair side to side absently. "Show me something interesting. Anything at all. Something I don't know about you yet." Will had one thing he could show Lucien, but he hesitated out of self-consciousness. Was he ready to lay bare that part of him? Lucien rolled his eyes at Will's lack of response. "Don't make me say it again. I don't like being bored. You don't want to bore me, right?" Will shivered at Lucien's tone. It was condescending, like he was speaking to someone beneath him, which Will wholeheartedly knew was the case. Because Will knew his place, the words did not make him unhappy. Quite the opposite. They turned him on. But Will tried to hide it as he nodded in understanding, gesturing to his computer. Lucien got the message and rose from the chair, instead taking a seat at the end of Will's bed, and Will had to tear his eyes away immediately. The sight of Lucien on his bed was too much, to say the least. Instead, Will busied himself on his computer, pulling up the results of the one thing he did besides watch Lucien. Once he finished, he pulled out headphones and held them out to Lucien, not daring to look over at him. Lucien took the headphones, then asked, "What are these for?" Will wrung his hands together, staring down at his lap as he spoke. "I make music sometimes, when you have days off." "Have you always been into making music?" Will shook his head. "Not until you." Lucien took a moment to reply, the air between them building a charge, slowly, achingly. And why is that? Will knew he was teasing him, making him state the obvious, but he was compelled to answer him as always. Because I make it all for you. I imagine your voice singing, and I can't help myself. So, I'm your muse, Lucien said playfully. No, Will argued. You're more than that. That word isn't enough. Lucien chuckled. Good. Are you going to play anything, or are you going to keep me waiting? Will wordlessly clicked play on his most recent instrumental track, and he could just barely hear it from where Lucien sat. He couldn't help but glance over to watch Lucien's expression carefully. The music had always been just for him, just another thing he did to feel closer to Lucien, and he was still registering that Lucien Angel himself was listening to it now. As he watched, the other man's face remained neutral, his eyes closed as he listened intently. It made Will's palms clammy, the anticipation stretching on as the seconds ticked by. Once the song was over, Lucien took the headphones off and held them out to Will. Will placed them on the desk as he dared to speak. What do you think? Lucien considered for a moment before responding, his hands folded on his lap. I think, he said, leaning closer to Will. Will did not move, not as Lucien inched closer, just within arm's reach. It's actually good. You've surprised me, Will, and I love surprises like that. Maybe I'll sing one just for you sometime. It was like winning the lottery. Maybe better. Maybe more like a god descending to earth and personally blessing you, Will thought. Lucien liked his music, and even offered to sing for him. If this was a dream after all, Will never wanted to wake up. Will? The sound of his name snapped him away from his thoughts, and his breathing became shallow as he stared at Lucien. I want to know something, Lucien said, leaning back into a position that froze Will's blood in his veins. His legs spread and his elbows went behind him to prop his torso up, his head tilted to the side so his hair cascaded over one shoulder. Am I the only person you've ever been obsessed with? Will swallowed hard, his throat struggling to pass the words. Yes, only you. Why is that? That was a question Will wasn't sure how to answer. He didn't know why no one else had ever appealed to him. His whole life he thought people were all the same, uninteresting and undeserving of being above others. His parents were the same as any stranger passing on the street, and any person he ever dated could have been replaced with anyone else. No matter the looks, gender, or personality of someone he met, they never inspired any real feelings in Will. He wasn't better than anyone, and no one was better than him. So he had gone through life without any real attachments, which suited him just fine. He could have spent the rest of his life alone, and it would have been all the same to him. But Lucien Angel had done the impossible, and become everything to Will. He knew without a doubt Lucien was flawless, knew he was beautiful, and knew he deserved to be above all others. Will, when it came down to it, had no reason besides that Lucien was just objectively perfect. Who else could have inspired love in such an unfeeling man? Only Lucien, with the voice of an angel and the aura of one too. No one else could compare. No one else shone so brightly. Will tried to find the words but came up short. How could he respond if he didn't even have the answer? After some time, Lucien sighed dramatically to get Will's focus on him. How about this? He offered. If you answer in a way I like, I'll give you a reward. All Will had was honesty, so he hoped it would be enough. Because no one else is perfect. Every single person has flaws, but you don't. From the first time I heard you sing, I knew you were better than anyone in the world, and that I would spend the rest of my life dedicated to you. Lucien smiled sweetly. Come here. Will stood, his heart hammering in his chest. He wasn't sure where to go, so he glanced at the spot next to Lucien on the bed. But when he tried to go to it, Lucien shook his head. On your knees. This section of the audiobook is abridged to follow community guidelines. If you would like the uncensored version, please check out the full book. After some time passed, Lucien sighed, sitting up and looking around the room in annoyance. I have to go home, he informed Will. Next time, you come to my place. It's too much of a hassle to do it here. Will's mouth hung open. There was a next time? At Lucien's home, no less? The idol gathered his clothes and redressed, packing the lube and remaining condoms in his bag and slinging it over one shoulder. Where is your phone? Lucien asked. Will pointed to his computer desk. Lucien crossed over to it and paused for a moment. What's the passcode? Will was about to answer, but the other man beat him to it. Lucien typed several numbers and then laughed. My birthday, of course. So predictable. Will just waited patiently for Lucien to finish whatever he was doing, not daring to move from the bed for fear he might break the light atmosphere between them. Eventually, Lucien placed the phone back down and walked over to Will. My phone number is in there now. You can text me anytime, but you will never call me unless I give you explicit permission. Is that understood? It was more than Will could ever hope for, but he didn't say so. He nodded. Good, he replied in approval, leaning down to place a soft kiss on Will's lips. Until next time. Will was frozen there for several minutes after Lucien had already left. He had to absorb all that had happened, engrave every detail into his memory for all time. As he cleaned himself up, throwing away the condom and making the trek up to the bathrooms to shower, he was in a daze. There was a next time. Will smiled the rest of the night, and even as he drifted to sleep, the smile did not leave his lips. He nodded off to the thought of that last kiss Lucien had gifted him. It had been gentle, the kiss of a real lover. At least, that's what he hoped.